The alert shrieked through Nellie's Air Force Base at 3:47 hours, piercing the Nevada dawn like a blade through silk. Security monitors lit up across the command center as motion sensors detected unauthorized movement in Hangar 7, a restricted facility housing classified aircraft prototypes. Within seconds, armed response teams were mobilizing, their boots pounding against concrete as they converged on the breach. Staff Sergeant Miguel Vasquez had been pulling a routine maintenance shift when he triggered the sensors. The young mechanic, barely 22 and fresh from technical school, had simply been following his supervisor's instructions to check the hydraulic systems on the experimental aircraft. But what he didn't know, what nobody had told him, was that this particular hangar operated under protocols so classified that even breathing the wrong way could summon a small army. The response was swift and overwhelming. Within minutes, the hangar was surrounded by security forces, their M4 carbines raised and ready. Red laser dots danced across Vasquez's maintenance coveralls as he stood frozen beside the sleek, angular aircraft that looked nothing like the F-16s he'd trained on. His hands trembled as he slowly raised them, his toolbox clattering to the floor in the sudden silence. "Identify yourself." The command echoed through the cavernous space, amplified by the hangar's steel walls. "Staff Sergeant Miguel Vasquez, 432nd Aircraft Maintenance Squadron," he stammered, his voice cracking with terror. I was just checking the hydraulics like Sergeant Morrison told me to." But Morrison was nowhere to be found. The duty roster showed no authorized maintenance for this aircraft. The security systems had no record of proper clearance protocols being followed. As far as the base's sophisticated monitoring systems were concerned, Vasquez was an intruder who had somehow bypassed multiple layers of security to gain access to one of the military's most closely guarded secrets. The situation escalated rapidly. Base Commander Colonel Patricia Hayes arrived within minutes, her face grim as she surveyed the scene. Behind her came the intelligence officers, their expressions unreadable as they began their preliminary assessment. The questions came fast and hard. How did he get in? Who gave him orders? What had he seen? What had he touched? Vasquez's answers painted a picture of confusion and miscommunication that seemed impossible to believe. He claimed his supervisor had given him a maintenance order, but the paperwork was missing. He insisted he'd used his standard access codes, but those codes shouldn't have worked on this particular hangar. Every explanation he offered only deepened the mystery. The investigation that followed would uncover a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of military command. But first, they needed to verify his story. And that verification would require a voice analysis that would change everything, not just for Vasquez, but for a legend who had supposedly died in combat 6 months earlier. The base's communication systems began their automated protocols, cross-referencing Vasquez's voice patterns against classified databases. Deep in the Pentagon's secured servers, an algorithm stirred to life, comparing vocal signatures with files marked deceased and classified. What it found would send shockwaves through the entire defense establishment. The morning sun climbed higher over the Nevada desert, casting long shadows across the tarmac where this mystery had begun. In Hangar 7, surrounded by armed guards and suspicious officers, Miguel Vasquez waited for answers that would change his life forever. He had no idea that his simple maintenance check had inadvertently triggered the most significant security breach in recent military history. The voice analysis continued, its algorithms probing deeper into classified records. And somewhere in those digital files, a ghost was about to speak. Colonel Hayes paced the command center, her mind racing through possibilities. A maintenance error was one thing, but the access codes bothered her. The hangar's security system was foolproof, or so they'd believed. Someone with the highest clearance levels had authorized this access, someone whose identity was hidden in layers of classification so deep that even she couldn't penetrate them. The communications officer looked up from his console, his face pale. "Ma'am, We're getting some unusual readings from the voice analysis system. The computer is flagging something in the clearance database. Hayes moved to the console, studying the scrolling data. What kind of flag? It's requesting verification from Central Command. Priority Alpha classification. The colonel's blood ran cold. Priority Alpha was reserved for the most sensitive military operations, the kind that could destabilize governments if exposed. Whatever was happening here went far beyond a simple maintenance error. Across the base, in the secure communications bunker, General Marcus Webb received the automated alert on his personal terminal. The four-star general had been reviewing intelligence reports when the priority message appeared, its red text demanding immediate attention. He read the brief summary once, then again, his weathered face growing increasingly grave. The voice analysis had triggered protocols that hadn't been used in over a decade. Deep in the military's classified archives, a file was being accessed, a file that officially didn't exist. The system had found a match, a voice print that corresponded to someone who should have been dead for 6 months. Webb's hands shook slightly as he entered his personal authorization codes. The file opened slowly, revealing a photograph that made his breath catch in his throat. Captain Elena, Phoenix, Rodriguez stared back at him from the screen, her dark eyes holding the same determination he remembered from their last conversation. According to official records, she had died in a classified operation over Syria, her F-22 Raptor destroyed by surface-to-air missiles. But the voice analysis suggested otherwise. The clearance codes used to access Hangar 7 had been authenticated using her vocal signature. Somehow, impossibly, Phoenix was alive. The general's mind raced through the implications. If Rodriguez had survived, why hadn't she made contact? Where had she been for 6 months? And why was her voice being used to authorize access to classified aircraft at Nellie's? He reached for his secure phone, his fingers hesitating over the keypad. The call he was about to make would either confirm the impossible or reveal a security breach of unprecedented magnitude. Either way, nothing would ever be the same. The phone rang twice before a familiar voice answered. "General Webb, I've been expecting your call." Webb's heart nearly stopped. The voice was unmistakably Elena Rodriguez, but it carried a weight of experience that hadn't been there 6 months ago. "Phoenix," he whispered, using her call sign from habit. "Hello, Marcus, we need to talk." The conversation that followed would reshape everything Webb thought he knew about the war in Syria, about classified operations, and about the pilot he believed was dead. But first, he needed to understand how she'd survived, where she'd been, and why she was now apparently operating in the shadows of the American military establishment. In Hangar 7, Miguel Vasquez continued to wait, unaware that his simple maintenance check had uncovered one of the military's most closely guarded secrets. The aircraft he'd been working on wasn't just experimental. It was a prototype designed for missions so classified that only a handful of people knew of its existence. And one of those people was supposed to be dead. The sun reached its zenith over Nellie's, casting harsh shadows across the base. In the distance, the desert stretched endlessly, keeping its secrets as it had for millennia. But today, some secrets were finally coming to light. Webb's conversation with Rodriguez lasted nearly an hour, their voices encrypted and shielded from prying ears. What he learned would change his understanding of modern warfare, of sacrifice, and of the prices paid by those who served in the shadows. When the call ended, he sat in silence for several minutes, processing the magnitude of what he'd just heard. The general's next call was to Colonel Hayes at Nellie's. His voice was steady, but carried an undertone of urgency that made Hayes straighten in her chair. "Patricia, I need you to release Staff Sergeant Vasquez immediately." The maintenance order was legitimate, authorized at the highest levels. The clearance codes were valid. Hayes frowned. "Sir, with respect, the codes don't match anyone in our database. The system flagged them as potentially fraudulent. The system flagged them because they belong to someone who's been operating under deep cover for the past 6 months, someone who officially doesn't exist. The colonel's mind raced. Sir, are you saying? I'm saying that Sergeant Vasquez stumbled into an operation that's been classified above your clearance level, above mine until this morning. Release him, Patricia, and prepare for a visitor. Hayes looked through the hangar's windows at the young mechanic, who sat with his head in his hands, still surrounded by armed guards. What should I tell him? Tell him he did his job correctly. Tell him that sometimes the right thing to do looks wrong from the outside. And tell him that what he saw in that hangar never happened. The line went dead, leaving Hayes with more questions than answers. She walked to the hangar, her mind trying to process the general's words. As she approached Vasquez, she saw something in his eyes that hadn't been there before, a knowledge that went beyond his years, as if the morning's events had aged him in ways that time alone couldn't achieve. Sergeant, she said softly, you're free to go. Vasquez looked up, confusion evident on his face. Ma'am, I don't understand. Your maintenance order was legitimate. You were where you were supposed to be, doing what you were supposed to do. The system flagged it as an error, but it wasn't. She paused, studying his face. What you saw in there, the aircraft, the response, it's classified. Do you understand what that means? The young mechanic nodded slowly. It means I never saw anything, ma'am. That's right. You came in, you checked some routine systems, and you left. Nothing more. As Vasquez gathered his tools and prepared to leave, Hayes couldn't shake the feeling that she was missing something crucial. The general's words had been carefully chosen, revealing just enough to end the immediate crisis while concealing the larger truth. Someone was coming to Nellie's, someone important enough to make a 4-star general nervous. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the base as Hayes prepared for her mysterious visitor. She had no idea that she was about to meet a ghost, a pilot who had sacrificed everything for her country and was now returning from the dead to prevent a catastrophe that could reshape the balance of global power. The secure transport arrived at Nellie's just as the sun began to set, its sleek black exterior reflecting the orange and purple hues of the desert sky. Hayes watched from the control tower as the aircraft taxied to a stop near Hangar 7, its engines winding down with a whisper that seemed almost supernatural in the desert silence. The passenger who emerged was not what Hayes had expected. The woman was of medium height, with dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun and eyes that seemed to hold the weight of the world. Her flight suit bore no rank insignia, no name tape, no unit patches, just the simple wings of a pilot and a small American flag on her right shoulder. But it was her walk that caught Hayes' attention. This was someone who moved with the confidence of a combat veteran, someone who had faced death and emerged stronger. As she approached the hangar, Hayes noticed the slight favor of her left leg, a subtle reminder of battles fought and prices paid. Colonel Hayes. The woman's voice was steady, professional, but Hayes detected something else beneath the surface, a weariness that spoke of months spent in the shadows, of missions that couldn't be acknowledged and sacrifices that couldn't be rewarded. Yes, ma'am, and you are. Captain Elena Rodriguez, call sign Phoenix. I believe we need to discuss what happened here this morning. Hayes felt a chill run down her spine. The name meant nothing to her, but the call sign triggered a memory from her intelligence briefings. Phoenix had been a pilot, an exceptional one who had died in combat over Syria. According to the classified reports, her body had never been recovered. You're supposed to be dead, Hayes said quietly. Rodriguez smiled, but there was no humor in it. Death is a luxury I couldn't afford, not with what I know, not with what's coming. They walked together toward the hangar, their footsteps echoing in the growing dusk. Hayes had 1,000 questions, but something in Rodriguez's bearing suggested that answers would come in their own time, in their own way. The maintenance sergeant, Rodriguez continued. He did exactly what he was supposed to do. The orders came through proper channels, authenticated with my voice codes. What he doesn't know, what he can never know, is that those codes were recorded during my final mission over Syria. Hayes stopped walking. Your final mission. The mission where I was supposed to die. The mission where Captain Elena Rodriguez did die in a way. What emerged from the wreckage was something different, someone who had seen too much, learned too much, to ever return to the normal world. They reached the hangar, where the experimental aircraft sat like a sleeping predator. Rodriguez approached it with the familiarity of someone who had flown similar machines, her hands tracing the smooth contours of its stealth coating. "This is why I'm here," she said. "This aircraft, these systems, they're not just experimental, they're operational, and someone is planning to use them for something that would make Syria look like a training exercise." Hayes felt the weight of classification settling around her like a heavy cloak. "What do you need from me?" "I need you to forget that Staff Sergeant Vasquez was ever here. I need you to seal the records of today's incident under the highest classification. And I need you to trust me when I tell you that what happens next could determine whether we're looking at peace or the beginning of the Third World War." The colonel looked at the aircraft, then at Rodriguez. "Are you telling me this machine is connected to an active threat?" "I'm telling you that the technology in this hangar is already being used by people who don't share our values, our restraint, or our commitment to peace. And the only way to stop them is to become something that officially doesn't exist." Rodriguez reached into her flight suit and withdrew a small device, its surface covered in switches and indicators that Hayes didn't recognize. "This is a prototype communication system, designed to interface with the aircraft's stealth systems. It's been modified to access networks that most people don't even know exist." She activated the device, and immediately the hangar's lights dimmed. The aircraft's systems began to power up, but silently, without the usual whine of generators or the hum of electronics. It was as if the machine was awakening from a deep sleep, ready to continue a mission that had been interrupted by death itself. "The people who think I'm dead," Rodriguez continued, "they're the same people who need to believe that this technology is still experimental, still years away from operational status. The truth is, we've been flying these missions for months, gathering intelligence on threats that could destabilize the entire region." Hayes watched as diagnostic displays flickered to life around the aircraft. "What kind of threats?" "The kind that make traditional warfare obsolete. The kind that could turn the balance of power overnight. The kind that require pilots who don't officially exist to fly missions that never happened." The hangar fell silent except for the soft hum of the aircraft's systems. Hayes realized she was standing at the threshold of a world she had never imagined, a world where the dead walked among the living and the impossible became routine. "What happens now?" she asked. Rodriguez looked up from the aircraft's control panel, her dark eyes reflecting the soft glow of the displays. "Now, we prepare for a war that most people will never know we fought, and we pray that when it's over, there will still be something left worth defending." The night deepened around Nelly's Air Force Base, cloaking the desert in darkness. In Hangar 7, two women stood beside an aircraft that represented the cutting edge of human technology and the ancient art of war. One was a colonel who had thought she understood the military's mission. The other was a ghost who had returned to prevent a catastrophe that could reshape the world. Outside, the stars wheeled overhead, indifferent to the drama unfolding below. But in the hangar, decisions were being made that would determine whether those stars would continue to shine down on a world at peace or a world consumed by a conflict unlike anything humanity had ever seen. The secure communication system crackled to life, its encrypted channels carrying messages from around the globe. Rodriguez moved to the control console with practiced ease, her fingers dancing across displays that showed real-time intelligence from conflict zones that most people couldn't even pronounce. "The situation is deteriorating faster than we anticipated," she said, her voice taking on the professional tone of a briefing officer. "3 days ago, our satellites detected unusual activity at a facility in the Caucasus Mountains. The imagery showed aircraft that shouldn't exist, using technology that shouldn't be operational." Hayes studied the displays, trying to make sense of the data streams flowing across the screens. "What kind of aircraft?" "Stealth fighters, but not like anything in our inventory. The radar signatures suggest they're using adaptive camouflage technology, something that can change its characteristics in real time. If they're operational, they could penetrate our air defenses without detection." Rodriguez called up a series of satellite images, each one showing a different angle of the mysterious facility. The aircraft visible in the photographs were sleek and angular, their surfaces seeming to shift and change even in the static images. "The intelligence community believes these are prototypes," Rodriguez continued, "but I know better. I've seen them in action. They're not prototypes, they're production models, and whoever built them has been planning this for years." Hayes felt a chill that had nothing to do with the desert night. Planning what? "A first strike capability that would render our entire air defense network obsolete. Think about it. If you could penetrate enemy airspace without detection, if you could strike any target anywhere in the world without warning, what would that mean for the balance of power?" The implications were staggering. Hayes had spent her career in the Air Force understanding that air superiority was the foundation of modern military strategy. If another nation had developed technology that could neutralize that advantage, the consequences would be catastrophic. "Who's behind this?" she asked. Rodriguez's expression darkened. "That's the million-dollar question. The facility is in disputed territory, officially controlled by no one. The satellite imagery shows no national markings, no identifying symbols, but the technology is too advanced for any single nation to have developed alone." She manipulated the controls, bringing up a new series of images. These showed personnel moving around the facility, their faces obscured by distance and image quality. But something about their movements, their organization, suggested military training of the highest order. "I was shot down investigating this facility," Rodriguez said quietly. "My mission was to conduct close-range surveillance, to gather intelligence on their capabilities. What I found was a network that spans multiple continents, funded by sources we're still trying to identify." Hayes studied the images, her mind racing through the implications. If this is true, if these aircraft are operational, then we're looking at a complete shift in global military balance. "Exactly. And the people behind this know it. They're not planning a conventional war. They're planning a decapitation strike that would eliminate our command structure before we even knew we were under attack." The communication system chimed softly, indicating an incoming priority message. Rodriguez moved to the console, her fingers flying across the encrypted keyboard. As she read the message, her face grew pale. "What is it?" Hayes asked. "Intelligence from our assets in the region. The facility is preparing for operational deployment. We have maybe 72 hours before they move to forward positions." Hayes felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. "What do you need from me?" Rodriguez turned from the console, her expression grim but determined. "I need you to authorize a mission that doesn't exist, using an aircraft that's not operational, flown by a pilot who's officially dead." The colonel looked at the experimental aircraft, then at Rodriguez. "You're talking about flying back into hostile territory, alone, against an enemy we don't fully understand." "I'm talking about preventing a war that could kill millions of people. The traditional military response would take weeks to organize, maybe months. By then, it would be too late. This is something that requires surgical precision, perfect timing, and a pilot who has nothing left to lose. Hayes walked to the aircraft, running her hand along its smooth surface. The technology represented decades of research, billions of dollars in development, and the dedication of thousands of engineers and scientists. It was a marvel of human achievement, but it was also a weapon of unprecedented power. "If I authorize this mission," she said slowly, "I'm putting my career, my freedom, possibly my life on the line. If something goes wrong, if you're captured or killed, there's no official record of this conversation, no acknowledgement that this aircraft exists." Rodriguez nodded grimly. "That's the price of operating in the shadows, Colonel. No recognition, no rewards, no acknowledgement of service. Just the knowledge that sometimes the right thing to do is also the thing that can't be officially sanctioned." The hangar fell silent as both women contemplated the magnitude of what they were discussing. Outside, the desert night pressed against the walls, indifferent to the human drama unfolding within. In the distance, the lights of Las Vegas twinkled like distant stars, a reminder of the world they were fighting to protect. Hayes walked to her command console and began entering her authorization codes. "I'm going to approve a routine test flight for this aircraft. Officially, you'll be conducting systems checks and performance evaluations. Unofficially," she paused, meeting Rodriguez's eyes, "unofficially, you'll be saving the world." Rodriguez moved to the aircraft's cockpit, her hands checking systems with the automatic precision of someone who had spent years mastering the machine. The mission profile is relatively straightforward. Penetrate enemy airspace, gather intelligence on their operational readiness, and if necessary, eliminate the threat before it can be deployed. "And if you don't come back?" Rodriguez paused in her pre-flight checks. "Then at least we'll know what we're facing. The intelligence I gather will be transmitted in real time to Central Command. Win or lose, we'll have the information needed to mount a proper response." Hayes watched as Rodriguez continued her preparations, each movement efficient and purposeful. This was a pilot who had faced death before, who had emerged from the wreckage of her previous mission stronger and more determined than ever. "The aircraft is equipped with the latest stealth technology," Rodriguez explained as she worked. "Active camouflage, adaptive radar absorption, even thermal masking. On paper, it's invisible to conventional detection methods, but we won't know for sure until we test it against their systems." The pre-flight sequence continued with methodical precision. Rodriguez checked every system, every sensor, every weapon. The aircraft was loaded with a combination of intelligence-gathering equipment and precision strike weapons, capable of either observing or eliminating targets with surgical accuracy. "Communication protocols are encrypted and frequency-agile," she continued. "I'll be able to maintain contact with Central Command throughout the mission, but if I'm detected, the first thing they'll do is try to jam our communications." Hayes nodded, understanding the implications. "You'll be on your own." "I've been on my own for 6 months, Colonel. This is just another day at the office." The final pre-flight checks were completed as the first hints of dawn appeared on the eastern horizon. Rodriguez climbed into the cockpit, her movements fluid and confident. The aircraft's systems responded to her touch like a living thing, displays flickering to life and instruments calibrating themselves automatically. "Phoenix to control," she said over the radio, her voice carrying the professional calm of a combat pilot. "Ready for departure." Hayes moved to the control console, her hand hesitating over the authorization switch. Once she pressed it, there would be no going back. The mission would be officially logged as a routine test flight, but both women knew the truth. This was a black operation, conducted in the shadows, with consequences that could reshape the world. "Control to Phoenix," Hayes replied, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. "You are cleared for departure. Godspeed." The hangar doors opened slowly, revealing the pre-dawn darkness of the Nevada desert. Rodriguez advanced the throttles, and the aircraft moved forward with almost supernatural silence. As it emerged from the hangar, its adaptive camouflage system activated, making it nearly invisible against the desert landscape. Hayes watched from the control tower as the aircraft taxied to the runway, its stealth systems rendering it almost impossible to see even with the naked eye. On radar, it would appear as nothing more than a brief glitch, a momentary anomaly that would be dismissed as atmospheric interference. "Phoenix, you are cleared for takeoff," Hayes transmitted. "Maintain communication protocol Alpha 7. Copy control, Phoenix is airborne." The aircraft lifted off with barely a whisper, its advanced propulsion systems producing thrust without the telltale signature of conventional engines. As it climbed into the darkness, Rodriguez felt the familiar sensation of leaving the Earth behind, of entering the realm where she was most at home. But this flight was different from any she had undertaken before. This wasn't a training mission or a routine patrol. This was a journey into the unknown, a mission that would either prevent a catastrophe or confirm that the world was about to change forever. As the aircraft disappeared into the pre-dawn sky, Hayes stood alone in the control tower, watching the empty space where it had been. On her screens, the radar showed nothing but the normal background clutter of the desert night. Officially, no aircraft had departed from Nelly's Air Force Base. Officially, Captain Alina Rodriguez was still dead. But in the darkness above, a ghost was flying toward a confrontation that would determine the fate of nations. The flight across the Pacific was conducted in complete radio silence, the aircraft's stealth systems rendering it invisible to every detection method known to military science. Rodriguez flew at altitudes that pushed the limits of the aircraft's capabilities, using atmospheric conditions and weather patterns to further mask her presence. Hours passed in relative calm, the aircraft's autopilot systems maintaining course and altitude, while Rodriguez monitored intelligence feeds from around the globe. The situation was deteriorating rapidly, with military exercises being conducted in sensitive regions and diplomatic communications taking on increasingly urgent tones. As she approached the operational area, Rodriguez began her final preparations. The aircraft's weapons systems were armed and ready, its sensors calibrated for maximum sensitivity. Intelligence gathering was the primary mission, but she was prepared for combat if the situation demanded it. "Phoenix to control," she transmitted on the encrypted channel. "Approaching target area, beginning reconnaissance phase." The response came immediately from Central Command, routed through satellites and encrypted so heavily that even she couldn't fully decode it. "Control to Phoenix. Maintain communication protocol. Intelligence indicates increased activity in target zone." Rodriguez acknowledged the transmission and began her approach to the mysterious facility. The aircraft descended through layers of clouds, its stealth systems adapting to each new environment. As the terrain below became visible, she could see the truth of what they were facing. The facility was massive, far larger than the satellite imagery had suggested. Runways stretched across the landscape, their surfaces designed to accommodate aircraft that shouldn't exist. Hangars dotted the complex, their doors open to reveal the angular shapes of stealth fighters unlike anything in the conventional world. "Control, this is Phoenix. I have visual on target facility. Confirm multiple aircraft appears to be production facility, not prototype development." The response was immediate and urgent. "Phoenix, maintain distance. Gather intelligence and return to base." But Rodriguez had already seen too much to simply observe and retreat. The facility below represented a threat that could not be ignored, a capability that could tip the balance of global power overnight. As she watched, aircraft began launching from the runways, their stealth systems engaging as they climbed toward operational altitude. "Control, I count at least 12 aircraft airborne, with more preparing for launch." This appears to be the beginning of operational deployment. The communication channel crackled with static as Central Command processed this information. Rodriguez could imagine the controlled chaos in the Pentagon's Situation Room, generals and intelligence officers trying to comprehend the magnitude of what they were facing. Phoenix, you are directed to maintain observation and gather detailed intelligence. Do not engage unless directly threatened. Rodriguez acknowledged the order, but her mind was already racing ahead to the implications. If these aircraft were deploying to forward positions, if they were preparing for operational missions, then the window for preventing catastrophe was rapidly closing. She began a systematic reconnaissance of the facility, her sensors gathering data on every aspect of the complex below. The aircraft's advanced imaging systems captured details that would have been impossible to obtain through satellite surveillance, revealing the true scope of the operation. What she found was sobering. The facility was not just a production center, it was a command hub, coordinating activities across multiple continents. The aircraft being produced here were just one component of a larger network, a web of capabilities that spanned the globe. As she gathered intelligence, Rodriguez became aware of a new threat. The facility's radar systems had detected something, their operators searching the skies for the source of the anomaly. Her stealth systems were holding, but she could see search patterns beginning to focus on her general area. Control, I may have been detected, continuing reconnaissance but preparing for possible engagement. The response was immediate and decisive. Phoenix, if you are detected, you are authorized to defend yourself. Complete the mission and return to base. Rodriguez felt a familiar calm settle over her, the same focus that had carried her through combat missions in Syria and beyond. The aircraft responded to her mental commands, its systems integrating with her intentions to create a weapon of unprecedented precision. Below, the first of the enemy aircraft had reached operational altitude and was beginning to search for her position. Rodriguez realized that she was about to engage in aerial combat unlike anything the world had ever seen, a battle between machines that officially didn't exist, flown by pilots who had moved beyond the normal boundaries of warfare. The first enemy aircraft appeared on her threat warning system, its radar signature unlike anything in the conventional world. Rodriguez maneuvered her aircraft with surgical precision, using the terrain and atmospheric conditions to mask her approach. This was more than a combat mission. It was a test of everything she had learned, everything she had become. As the enemy aircraft closed to engagement range, Rodriguez felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that came with combat. But this time, there was something more, a sense of purpose that transcended personal survival. She was not just fighting for her own life, but for the future of a world that would never know what she had sacrificed to protect it. The engagement began with a burst of electronic warfare, each aircraft trying to jam the other's systems. Rodriguez's advanced countermeasures held, but she could see that her opponent's capabilities were far beyond anything intelligence had predicted. This was not just advanced technology, it was a quantum leap in military capability. Control, I am engaged. Enemy capabilities exceed all estimates. Continuing mission. The aerial battle that followed would never be recorded in any official history, never acknowledged by any government. But in the skies above the secret facility, two pilots pushed the boundaries of human capability, their aircraft dancing through three-dimensional space in a deadly ballet of advanced technology and skilled airmanship. Rodriguez emerged victorious, but the victory came at a cost. Her aircraft was damaged, its stealth capabilities compromised. More importantly, she now knew the truth about what they were facing, a threat that could not be defeated by conventional means, an enemy that had moved beyond the normal rules of warfare. As she turned toward home, transmitting the intelligence she had gathered, Rodriguez realized that the world was about to change forever. The age of traditional warfare was ending, replaced by something darker, more complex, and infinitely more dangerous. The flight home was conducted in emergency mode, the aircraft's damaged systems struggling to maintain altitude and heading. Rodriguez pushed her machine to its limits, knowing that the intelligence she carried was worth more than her life. Every mile brought her closer to safety, but also closer to the realization that safety itself was an illusion. As the American coast appeared on the horizon, Rodriguez felt a complex mix of emotions: relief at having survived, pride in having completed the mission, but also a deep sadness at what she had learned. The world below looked peaceful, its inhabitants unaware of the forces gathering in the shadows. The landing at Nelly's was conducted under maximum security, the aircraft hidden in Hangar 7 before anyone could observe its damaged condition. Rodriguez emerged from the cockpit knowing that she had crossed another threshold, moved further from the normal world into the realm of shadows and secrets. Colonel Hayes was waiting for her, along with a team of intelligence officers and technicians. The debriefing would be thorough, the implications of what she had discovered analyzed and transmitted to the highest levels of government. But for now, Rodriguez simply stood on the hangar floor, feeling the weight of what she had learned. "Welcome back, Phoenix," Hayes said quietly. "What did you find?" Rodriguez looked at the damaged aircraft, then at the faces of the people around her. "I found the future, Colonel, and it's not what any of us expected." The debriefing that followed lasted 18 hours, with Rodriguez providing detailed accounts of everything she had observed. The intelligence gathered during her mission painted a picture of a threat that exceeded every worst-case scenario developed by military planners. The enemy was not just advanced, they were revolutionary. General Webb arrived from the Pentagon as the debriefing concluded, his face grave as he reviewed the preliminary reports. The conversation that followed would reshape American military strategy and redefine the nature of global conflict. "The facility you observed," Webb said, studying the reconnaissance photographs, "it's not just a production center. It's a node in a global network, one that we're only beginning to understand. The aircraft you encountered represent just one component of a larger system." Rodriguez nodded, her exhaustion evident but her mind still sharp. "The technology I observed is at least 20 years ahead of anything in our inventory. Whoever is behind this has been planning for decades, building capabilities that we didn't even know were possible." Webb turned to Hayes, his expression serious. "Patricia, I'm classifying this entire operation at levels that don't officially exist. Everyone involved is now operating under cover identities, their real names stricken from official records. This conversation never happened." Hayes understood the implications. "What about Staff Sergeant Vasquez?" "He's being transferred to a classified unit, his records sealed. He knows too much to return to normal duty, but he's also proven that he can be trusted with sensitive information. He'll be briefed on a need-to-know basis." Rodriguez stood, moving to the window that overlooked the base. In the distance, she could see normal Air Force operations continuing, pilots and mechanics going about their daily routines unaware of the shadow war being fought above their heads. "The enemy is preparing for something," she said quietly. "The deployment I observed was just the beginning. They're moving assets into position for a coordinated strike, something that will neutralize our ability to respond effectively." Webb joined her at the window, his weathered face reflecting years of difficult decisions. "What do you recommend?" Rodriguez turned to face him, her dark eyes holding a determination that had been forged in the crucible of combat. "We need to move beyond traditional military thinking. This isn't a conventional war. It's something entirely new. We need pilots who can operate in the shadows, aircraft that don't officially exist, and missions that never happened." "You're talking about creating a ghost squadron," Webb said. "Pilots who are officially dead, operating aircraft that are officially experimental, conducting missions that are officially impossible.